We have to develop a market which does not yet exist.
I think in this case, China will lead the pace.
Today in cars, you have an ecosystem of very fragmented pieces of software being distributed. Now the industry has understood that that needs to be centralized.
If you can get camera-like resolution with radar-like range simultaneously, it can then unlock these operational domains beyond highways.
Hello from Abu Dhabi, where the race to become the leader in autonomous driving is well and truly underway. The right technology going to be key to winning that race. Today on the IAA Mobility Visionary Club, we're bringing together a bunch of experts to find out which technology they think is ultimately going to break through. Stay with us. LiDAR, radar, 4D, GPS, the development of the most future-oriented technology is going to be key when it makes autonomous driving suitable for the masses. Today on our panel, we are diving deep on which technology is going to break through. I'm joined by a top OEM, some tech experts, and industry insiders to talk about what the future holds. Let me introduce you to our panel. Up first, we have Jan Becker. You are the CEO and co-founder of Apex AI. That is an autonomous driving software. Jan, it's so great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be here.
To my right, we have Jason Eichenholz. You are the founder and CTO of Luminar, which I think most autonomous driving enthusiasts have heard of. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the opportunity.
We also have joining us remotely from a little company called Mercedes, George Massing. He's the Vice President, MB.OS, Automated Driving, PowerNet, and Integration. He's leading development at Mercedes for autonomous driving. And George, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be there.
And last, but very certainly not least, we have Werner Engel. He is the Senior Vice President, Head of Global Sales, Autonomous Driving Systems at, can I call it ZF Group or ZF?
Perfect.
There we go.
You can say both.
I will call it ZF Group. Guys, it is so great to have you here. We're going to be diving deep into some of the technical stuff in a minute, but just as a little icebreaker, I'm hoping you can tell me what was your very first car? Jan, you want to kick us off?
I had a 3 Series BMW built in the early 70s.
Okay, you could do a lot worse than that. That's going to be hard to top. What do you got, Jason?
I had a 1981 Vet, 1981 Chevy Chevette.
Key distinction. Can I ask? What color was it?
It was brown.
Of course. It had to be brown, didn't it? Werner, what about you?
My first car was a Fiat 127 in absolute ugly green, but
Ugly green.
better to drive badly than to walk well, and I loved it.
There you go. Ugly green, a trademark name. George, what about you? What was your first car?
You will not imagine it, but it was a PT Cruiser.
Ooh.
And the reason why I was driving a PT Cruiser in a Mercedes plant was because of this wild time the PT Cruiser had through the very explosive and gang area. And that's why I like
A PT Cruiser for George. I can totally picture that. I think we can all agree that cars have come a long way since all of us started driving. We're all waiting for autonomous driving to become even more widespread. So let's open up this discussion. When is level 4 going to reach the masses? Give me your predictions.
The masses, I think, is going to take a couple more years. You know, technology always takes actually a long time, much longer than we imagined to really achieve widespread adoption. I still remember ESP, which is now almost in all new cars. ESP was developed in the 80s, introduced in production into the 90s, then saw widespread adoption in the 2000s, and now in the 2010, it finally became mandatory on all new cars. And now 40 years later, we have 60, 70, 80% market penetration. So it took 40 years. And we are now roughly 20, 25 years into the development of autonomous vehicles. I helped build the first autonomous vehicle in the late 90s, so almost 25 years ago. I think it's going to be another 5 to 10 years.
Very cool. You helped build the first autonomous vehicle in the late 90s. That's something for your biography, I think.
It's in there.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Any other opinions on that?
I think the interesting point is that we have to develop a market which does not yet exist. And technology is the base for it, and it has to work, and it has to prove its reliability. And this is what engineering has to provide first. If I can make a prediction, I would guess that within 2-3 years, 4 years latest, it will become a mass phenomena when it has proven its reliability. I agree with you. We'll still take some time. What I like of the idea is that people are waiting for it. This means that there is a huge interest, and otherwise nobody would wait for it. Just be surprised when it comes. And I like this.
Yeah, I think customers want it, but I think they're confused by the SAE levels. I think they don't understand level 3, level 4. I think it's much easier to understand driver in the loop versus driver out of the loop. And I think you're going to see that in the next couple of years being geofenced to highways to start with, where the car is in control. You're able to take your mind off of things. You know, humans are distracted drivers with their cell phones already. But I think over the next couple of years, and working with our OEM partners, you're going to be able to see true driver out-of-the-loop experiences on highways to begin with.
And give us a time frame. I mean, George, we're going to come to you next. You're very next. I mean, a couple of years?
Yeah, a couple of years away. You're going to see that in some of our partnerships with Volvo and Mercedes and other of our customers, and the people bringing this to true consumers, which is going to be a very different experience than the robo-taxi experience that you're going to get from a true level 4 type system.
Yeah, we're going to be talking more about robo-taxis, but let's let George weigh in with his predicted timeline for level 4 autonomous driving. Hit me, George.
I believe we have to differentiate. It's also kind of generation. So we have the so-called Generation Y. They will drive that car already today. So if there was a car available out there, I think my son and daughter, they will be fully willing to drive it. And it's not a surprise that in a region like China, who have been adopting more electronics, will probably be the first generation where you will see a widespread of autonomous vehicle, and very, very soon.
Well, you're leading into another interesting point. You're talking about China and Asia. Which market is the most ahead right now? I know we've got people here from Germany, from the US. Yeah.
Let me add something to
Sure.
what George said. Generation Y. George, wouldn't it be interesting in an aging society to offer more and more assistance and autonomy to myself? I'm 57, and maybe in 20 years I'm absolutely happy to have a car which takes over the task I cannot do physically anymore. I think we are a little bit underestimating or under-evaluating the help and the assistance of such systems in an aging society. Would you agree to that?
It's about trust in the system. It's about a trust in the system. So we, elderly people, we trust what we see. So and the first thing, and this will lead the way to a very fast integration of our autonomy into the market, will be the more trust people get into the system. So we, as elderly people, we want to see it, we want to feel it, we want to trust the system. The younger generation, they trust the system first, and then they just let it go. So this is the only difference between those two generations that I'm bringing back. I totally agree with you. So it will be fantastic doing it. And I hope we will come into that part also during the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. You know, there's a use case for younger users. They might be more ready to adopt, but also older users might have more of a direct need for it. But let's come back to this issue of geography. When we look at the markets, you mentioned Asia. Which region is most ahead? Which region is most poised to be on the cutting edge?
I think in terms of technology development, we see the West Coast of Silicon Valley, where Jason and I are working. We see those furthest along. But then in terms of bringing technology into the market, Germany has, or Europe in general, is furthest along with the manufacturers, you know, having 20, 30, 40 years, including the supplier base, having 20, 30 years experience of taking a new technology, then making it robust, reliable, so that it can actually be used in mass production.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
I see the same. I think in Europe, they're really leading the charge in terms of driver out-of-the-loop experiences, rather than having to have a driver pay attention and be engaged at all time. Sort of level, they call it level 2+ or level 3, and that becomes very confusing. The same thing, we're working with SAIC in China, and they are also rapidly advancing, moving autonomy to the masses, where you can start purchasing these systems and getting it yourself from the dealership. So I definitely see it moving more there. The U.S. is a little bit further behind.
Yeah. Okay.
Jason, please, George.
Mercedes is doing a lot on this. Let's let George weigh in. We'll come to Werner. Yeah.
I think in this case, China will lead the pace. So,
Really?
And yes. So I will really position myself here, and this is what we are seeing. So they are really pushing the bar very high and very fast. So, and I personally believe they will lead the pace, but Europe and US will follow. No, US and Europe will follow exactly into that order. And Jan, you just mentioned the West Coast. The West Coast is, as a region, and from the use case perspective, is actually the best region to start and doing all those stuff in order to push the bar up. But because of the strength legislation environment in the US, where each state have to decide by itself about how to progress, so this may slow down a little bit the pace of introduction into the US market.
Let me explain you my view. Talking about L3, L4, L5. L5, you might agree, is the robo-taxi area anywhere, anytime. L3 is what you very successfully have introduced as Mercedes, is a driver assistance system. We are focusing on L4, which means without driver, but on defined ODDs, on defined routes. And why do I believe that this is something which we will see in Europe first? Because it's not only driven by interest for technology, but by need. And the need in Europe is pretty high because states and communities and cities are heavily investing in the development of urban transport, of public transport. And there is a lack of driver. So they cannot solve the problem without technology which contributes to avoid the drivers. And the second aspect I want to mention is that Germany, and it's not to, how do you say in English, blow our horn? Or
Toot your own horn?
has the first L4 legislation put in force last year in the world. So from a regulatory standpoint, we are pretty ahead. And this is something we need. Industry needs these standards. Otherwise, we will never leave these county releases and these individual releases, which cost a lot of money. And for that reason, I'm very convinced that Europe will play a major role in L4 deployment, maybe not L5, over the next years.
Okay. So let's come back to this issue of technology for a second and talk about what is the most mature technology. And when we talk about hardware, Jason, that seems predestined for you to answer.
So I think the most mature hardware technology is still camera and radar. We've had a long time to kind of get the radar from an R&D project into production. But what people are realizing is in order to unlock the autonomy, you can't do that with just cameras and radar. You need some sort of native 3D sensing technology and something that's also computationally not as intensive, which is where LiDAR technology comes. And so we're rapidly advancing the growth of LiDAR and following the lessons learned from taking radar to market and doing the same thing, sort of running the same playbook in order to get LiDAR technology. And then it becomes a complement of radar when you need it, LiDAR technology to have that native 3D, and cameras. You still need cameras in these systems. So the combination of all three are really advancing autonomy.
Okay, I see Jan nodding here. I want to let you weigh in on this.
Yeah, I do agree with Jason. And then in addition to the hardware, obviously you need software. And then you need software that runs with high performance, but also with high reliability. Today in cars, you have an ecosystem of very fragmented pieces of software being distributed across hundreds of ECUs in the vehicle. Now the industry has understood that needs to be centralized onto central computers, so-called central ECUs. Those central ECUs need to run a common operating system, which is what the whole industry is now striving for and working for in the context of the so-called software-defined vehicle. And that's also the component that we provide and that we've already developed, a central vehicle operating system.
Do you guys think in the future that we're going to see one solution push through as sort of a winner-takes-all model, or are there going to be a variety of solutions on the market?
We don't plan 100% market share, so I would
You
say there will be competition also in future on different systems. There will be not one system winning. And the reason is we are operating autonomous vehicles in very different use cases. A truck is not a city bus. A city bus is not a car. A car is not a mining vehicle. Or think about trains or ships, which potentially can be autonomous as well. So I think we will see an interesting landscape of different solutions.
Okay. Let's let Mercedes weigh in, and then we'll come back. George?
It is a very heterogeneous market. So you will not have a one-fit-all solution. You have different types of car. Mercedes will still build the best luxury vehicle out there into the market. So, and for that, autonomy is just one piece of the whole. So, and we are striving first towards all electric. So that means this will also drive the way we will have to define our MB.OS or operating system. So therefore, autonomy is just a piece in that overall operating system.
Did you want to weigh in?
No, I think George is right to bring up the fact that you've got electrification. So you've got electrification and autonomy simultaneously. This is the single largest transformation to transportation since the Model T. So the industry is at this crossroads, and what's needed is some significant innovation and paradigm shifts. And so, for example, with LiDAR technology, if you can get camera-like resolution with radar-like range simultaneously, it can then unlock these operational domains beyond highways. It can open up for robotaxis or city driving, and it will change dramatically over the next couple of years. But if you stay with what we have today, we're probably going to be very stagnant in our growth. And so all of these things are coming together.
Go ahead.
Maybe I want to add something there. So, and this is the reason why I brought electrification, and we were talking about technology before. We all have to understand that by bringing electrification, our new currency is now range. Range means you have to have less energy or less loss. So by having less loss, all the different technology that has been stated before, you bring more cameras, you bring more radars, you bring more LiDAR, you bring bigger ECUs. So the first thing that all those things are doing, they are sucking energy out of a car, which means they are bringing less range out of the car. So our biggest challenge is now to find a way, as just mentioned, to have things like LiDAR, so which takes less energy out of the car in order to bring more range towards for the customer. So that's why we always have to take this into consideration. At least us as OEM, we have to take all this overall system into consideration.
Okay, we could keep going on this forever. I'll let you weigh in very quickly. We're coming to the end of this.
May I add one component, which is connectivity?
Yeah.
We didn't talk yet about it. Connectivity is key. And this is something I would consider also a revolution in the market. And you all know from which company we learned about that. And if I look to autonomous driving, nobody on board, maybe passengers, how do you connect between passengers and the control room? It's about connectivity, data collection, data analysis, and data management. And I think this is at least as interesting as the other sensors on board.
Okay, we're going to have more time in the second part of our discussion to dive even deeper into the exact roadmap on the technology. But before we end this roadmap, I want to give you all a wish from the autonomous driving fairy. He or she is coming to visit you, and you get to wish for one thing to speed up this transition to bringing Level 4 to the masses. And Jan, we'll start with you. I need one sentence. What are you wishing for to happen?
Much more collaboration between the industry players.
More collaboration.
Still too much work in silos.
Well, hopefully this collaboration can start today on the sidelines of this panel. Jason, what's your wish?
My wish is that there is an equal emphasis on improving automobile safety as there is autonomy, and finding a way where people can leverage the aspects of autonomy and the sensors in order to make cars safer.
Making cars safer, okay. Werner, what's your wish? The ferry's coming.
My wish is that technology leads to a customer experience with this, which is new and which is exciting. Not only the technology itself is the key.
Think about the customer. All right, George, we're going to give you the last word since you're joining us remotely from your vacation. Bless you.
Regulatory. So I wish we have a very lean or common regulatory all over the world.
Regulatory is something we're going to be diving very deep into in a future episode of the IAA Mobility Visionary Club. So thank you for doing my job for me. Guys, stick around. We have much more to talk about in the second episode. But for now, from me and the whole team here, Jan, Jason, Werner, George, thank you so much for being our guest. We will be back in another episode with more from these guys on the roadmap to level 4 autonomous driving. I hope you'll join us. See you soon.